hello from here at the CBS Arena in Coventry, where Hull City have been beaten again by 2-1. And it's a kind of familiar tale, if truth be told. Poor defending, a feeling of sheer frustration, I think, for everybody associated with Hull City. And if I'm brutally honest, I don't think anybody of black and amber persuasion could have too many complaints. Coventry were full value for their win. You did think at one point it was going to be our day when Joao Pedro scored 2 minutes before half-time, completely against the run of play. It does have to be said. Coventry were the dominant force in the first half. City were really, really poor. Kept giving the ball away. They just could not get anything going. It was, yeah, they weren't great at all, and I think that's probably putting it mildly. But when Abu Kamara crossed for Ryan Longman at the back post and Ryan headed against the crossbar, and Joao Pedro turned it in from 4 or 5 yards out centre of goal to give City a 1-0 lead just before the break, you're thinking, wow, maybe the luck is going to turn for us. And they haven't played well, but they've got themselves a goal in front. That's quietened the Coventry crowd down a bit. If they can get to half time, kind of settle and regroup a bit more, then they can go on and get something from the game, maybe win a game. I know we've all forgot what that is actually feels like. It's been so long, 75 days, I think now, since City last won away at QPR. But alas, it was the same old story, very similar to Wednesday night. They just cannot keep a lead, and although they had the 15-minute half-time interval, they conceded, I think it was 7 minutes into the second half, so 9 minutes of actual football. So again, they've not been able to keep a lead for 10 minutes. Probably Coventry's best player was Ephraim Mason-Clark, and I'm a big Louis Coyle fan. I like Louis Coyle. I think he's a really good, solid championship right back, but he had a shocker today for the most part, and right from early on, Mason-Clark just tore him to pieces up and down that left-hand side, or Coventry's left, and so it proved. The cross came in. Ryan Giles should have stopped the cross from the left-hand side, didn't stop the cross from the left-hand side. It came to the back post, and Coyle was trying to, I think he was trying to kind of ease Mason-Clark out of it, but he didn't do it well enough, and Mason-Clark wanted it more, basically, and he got to the ball first, with his face, and put it in at the back post. And I think the really frustrating thing for Hull City was Coventry didn't really start the second half with any great momentum. It's not like the crowd were roaring them on and they were pinging balls in and out the penalty area, and City were having to hang on as they had done in parts of the first half. That wasn't the case. It was kind of like, it was really quiet at the start of the second half, and it was just one ping, almost a hopeful cross into the box. There was nobody in the penalty area, really, and it was a ball that kind of, Panda was a bit hesitant, and it just went straight through the box, and there was no real danger until obviously Mason-Clark just wanted to get on the end of the cross, and you have to give him a huge amount of credit, because he did, and he got his rewards. And out of nothing, City have gone from winning the game 1-0 and being fairly comfortable early in the second half to conceding the goal, and the game changed. They got a penalty, did Coventry, moments after Charlie Hughes was booked on kind of our side, right in front of the press box. He was booked for a tackle he didn't probably need to make. And then moments later, he hacked down Coventry's centre forward Bissett. Cast iron penalty, definite penalty. And if I'm honest, if Bobby Madley hadn't have booked him a couple of minutes earlier, he probably booked him for that tackle. It was rash, it was reckless, didn't need to make it. And you're thinking, right, here we go. They've gone from being a goal up, City, to probably 2-1 down. But Victor Tupp's penalty, brilliantly saved by Panda away to his left, and he got the rebound as well. So again, you're thinking, right, okay, they've had the setback of conceding the goal, but they've had the stroke of luck with the penalty. Goalkeepers need a bit of luck, as good a save as it was. Now go on then, go and get, because they were better. They were actually, as an attacking force. Mason Burstow came on at half time for Kamara, who had a knock. No concerns, by the way, of Abu Kamara for next weekend, but there was just a precaution is why they took him off at half time. Burstow was looking bright. They looked more of a team in the second half. They had more cohesion. They were less profligate in possession. They were less, just didn't give it away as much in the second half. And you're thinking, right, go on then. You've had that bit of luck with the penalty. Go and win the game. Because Coventry were awful at the back. Defensively, they were awful. Throughout the game, they were awful. Whenever City put them under any kind of pressure, they made errors. But then, look, I just, Mason Clark again down the left-hand side. Malem came off the bench. He left him on his arse, backside, I should say. Louis Coyle was left on his backside. He pinged over the cross, and everybody just stood there and watched Jack Redoney, who we know well from Huddersfield. He did very well at Huddersfield. Just ran in and headed in from close range, and that was 2-1 with 18 minutes to go. And you never really felt that City were going to come back from that. They had a couple of moments, a couple of half chances, but again, it's just, you've, like I say, I don't think anybody can have any complaints about the result, because I think Coventry were far the better team. Particularly in the first half, it was one-way traffic, and you could see from early on, Mason Clark was giving Coyle a torrid time. And look, I don't want to hang Louis or Ryan Giles on the other side out to dry, because they do need more help from Kamara and Longman respectively. But they've got to stop crosses. You've got to stop crosses. If you don't stop crosses at any level, you're going to get punished. And I asked Ruben Sayers about it, and he was like, we wanted to try and get them to play through the middle. We wanted to close off the flanks because we knew that's where their threats would lie. We wanted them to play through the middle. We thought we could close those passing channels through the middle. It didn't really work because they went out wide and just kept peppering, coming in from wide, and they just couldn't deal with Mason Clark. And that's what I want. What his performance was, what you want to see from a winger: direct, that desire to get on the end of a cross or put a cross in the penalty area, twisting and turning, and we're not seeing that so much from Hull City. I thought Kamara again showed moments of promise in the first half before he came off. Obviously, the cross, excuse me, for the goal. But it's all too easy. The attitude for me was a concern in the first half, and that's not always something that I've criticised the players about. But I thought the attitude in the first half was really poor. The desire didn't seem there. That, as I say, that bite in the challenge. They were really aggressive against Watford, but today they'd give the ball away and be like, oh, we've given the ball away. Somebody else's problem. And that is a big concern for me after 20 games of a championship season, when you're bottom of the table and your team hasn't won in 75 days. For players just to go, it's somebody else's problem, I'm not going to stop that cross, somebody else can deal with it. That is a big worry. And he's got a big job on, Ruben. We knew he did, and he knew he did. But, we were all a bit chipper, weren't we, after Watford? As gutted as we were at losing the concession of the goal, having gone in front so late, I think we all felt a little bit better about things. The manner of the performance, the way they played, the fact they didn't lose the game. We've come here today and I'd say rolled over, but I just feel a bit dispirited after this performance today, and I don't want to get too emotional. I don't want to get too caught up in it's a result and it's a performance, but that's kind of where we're at, really. I just look at that first half display, having got you've weathered a storm, you've played rubbish, you've made a lot of errors, but you've got in front. Now the good teams, when they get in front away from home, they shut the game down. They play clever football. There's a bit of game management in there, and it was just like taking sweets off a kid. It was really poor, the way they gifted chances, the way they gifted the goal, and they had the stroke of luck with the penalty. And they didn't react to that. They didn't go on and think, right, okay, that's the kick up. That's a bit of a kick up the backside. We've had a bit of a let off. Now let's go and really punish Coventry like we've seen teams do to City this season. And I'm just not convinced, really. And the bottom of the table, they deserve to be. I know Frank Lampard said before the game that the league table doesn't always give a fair reflection at this stage of the season. Well, I disagree. I think if you're bottom of the table after 20 games, and you've won 3 of them, you deserve to be. And on that performance, the 500 or so City fans that were here today deserve more than that. And that, ultimately, the manager can do so much. He can try and make them difficult to beat. He can put things in place. But ultimately, as I've just said to Panda just now, the players have got to go out and perform. They really have. And Luke, you're right. They are so naive, and the goals they're conceding are so poor. They're not. look, you don't want to concede any goal. Obviously, that goes without saying. But you don't so much mind if somebody rattles one in from 35 yards and you go, hand up, mate. That's a great goal. Or if a team, passes and moves and creates a really good moment and scores a fantastic goal, you go, look, it's football. Teams score goals, but it's the type of goals they concede, and they're just so bad, and they're also so avoidable. There's a lack of bravery in that team, and I still think they've got enough to get out of it. But I keep saying it, I keep saying the same thing, and you can't not be worried when you're bottom of the table going into Christmas and you've not won since September. That is, it's now 13 games without a win. It's 3 wins all season. It's 7 defeats in 8. The stats, we can talk about the underlying stats, like we have done before. We can talk about XG and possession, although they've had a lot less possession. They only had 40% of it today, and it was similar on Wednesday. But the key stats are they're conceding too many goals and they're not scoring. And if you haven't got a desire, a willingness to keep the ball out of your net, then you've got a fundamental problem. And I think, there's pressure on these players now to prove that they are worthy of being championship players, because some of them, if this carries on, they're going to be relegated. And that's not being dramatic. That's not trying to over-egg the situation. They're bottom of the table, and Christmas is what they've got one more game before Christmas now. So unless they win that and results go their way next weekend against Swansea, who at the time of recording this are beating Sunderland at home, they're going to be bottom at Christmas. That's embarrassing for that group of players. For a group of players, some of which were trying to get into the Premier League last year. You think it's only a few months ago we were here at the end of April and City won a thrilling game 3-2 to keep their playoff hopes alive and pretty much end Coventry's. And we're now here, a few months later, and City are bottom of the table. The whole football club should be embarrassed about the situation, and that's from the owner all the way down to the squad, because to have allowed City to go from being a team that are competing for a place in the Premier League to being bottom of the Championship a game before Christmas is a shambles. That is not good, and it is going to take. Tim Walter used to talk about having big balls. Well, if the players have got big balls, they need to go out and show it, starting next week against Swansea, because the home form in 2024 has been a disgrace. 3 wins in 23 games, is it? The home form has been a disgrace. They've got one chance now to end the year and give the fans something to smile about going into Christmas. But the way Swansea are playing and the way Hull City are playing, at the minute, without being negative, you call a spade, that's an away banker. They've got to go out and get a result. And look, we can keep talking. We can keep trying to find the positive. Somebody had a go at me earlier on for being too negative at half-time, saying City were outplayed, but they were a goal up. You say it as you see it. You call a spade, and you can't sugarcoat it. And they aren't good enough. They haven't been good enough over 20-odd games this season. And they're going to have to sort something out in January. But throwing money at it in January is not going to solve the problem, because as I keep saying this, and I'll go, at the risk of boring you, January's a problem for them, because they're bottom of the table. Who are they going to attract to want to come and play for a team that are bottom of the table and can't win a game for love of the money? The only players that are going to want to come are young players from the Premier League that see it as an opportunity to play some games, which is a risk, or it's going to be players that are coming from abroad or coming from the Premier League that haven't been playing, that think it's a cushy payday. Let's go to Hull City. They'll pay me a decent whack, and I'm not really asked if they get relegated or not, because if they do, I'll be off. If they don't, great, decent. You don't want players coming in for the wrong reasons. They've got to want to come. And again, to reiterate a point we've made before, attracting players in January last year was fairly easy, wasn't it? Because they paid good money and they were chasing for a place in the Premier League. Now they're trying to avoid slumping back into League One. And on this evidence, this is going to take some turning around. Yeah, Stephen, absolutely. They've got to make themselves hard to beat, but they're not, though, are they? That's the problem. They haven't been hard to beat. They've kept one clean sheet all season, and that was the 3rd game of it against Millwall. And even in then, that was fairly fortuitous. Millwall, I think back to that game, and Duncan Watmore and George Honeyman had some great chances in that first 25 minutes to score. So that was by hook, more by luck than judgment. So they've had one clean sheet. They're not. they're too easy to score against. You know, they've scored first in 2 games now. That's a positive. That is a positive for you. They've scored the first goal in 2 games. They've scored 2 goals in 2 games. That's we'll take that. That's better. Problem is they've conceded 3. So they conceded on Wednesday night and lost and drew the game. Conceded twice here, and it would have been more, but for a penalty save. There's a fundamental problem. You don't want to hang the players out to dry, because it's not a case that they're thrown in the towel, that they're not bothered. They are trying, but it's not working. They've got to go back to basics, as you say, Stephen. They've got to find a way to make themselves more difficult to beat, and just have that desire to keep the ball out at all costs, keep the ball out of your net. If they'd have kept the ball out of the net today, they'd win the game 1-0. If they'd have kept the ball out of the net against Watford, they win the game 1-0. That's 6 points there in 2 games. Suddenly, the table looks, they're well out the bottom 3. They're looking up the table, and suddenly we're going into Christmas and Swansea thinking, you know, it could have been 3 in a row here. As it is, they've got a point from 2 games, and they've lost 1. So there has to be a greater accountability, rather than just going, oh, it was his fault, or it was his fault. That you can't have that. The players as a collective have got to take responsibility for keeping clean sheets, you know, and ultimately they've got to find one from somewhere. But look, Darren, they are lacking in confidence, and results breed confidence. I've just said to Ivo, you know, if they can find a way to win on Saturday, however that comes, we don't care. The confidence they would get from that, and the fans and the whole football club going into Christmas and beyond, would be seismic. It really would. And who's to say that if they were to beat Swansea, they wouldn't then go to Blackburn and get a result? Preston and get a result, and then go to Blackburn and get a result. And then suddenly you're looking at the Middlesbrough and Leeds games at home at the start of the new year with a bit more confidence. But at the minute, you're looking at every game with trepidation. You're looking at every game going, I can't see how they win that game, because they're averaging a goal. They're still not averaging a goal a game in the league, and they're conceding more. They're conceding goals. So it's really, as I say, you try and be optimistic. You try and look for the good and all that sort of stuff, rather than just be, you know, negative. But the reality of the piece is we can't get away from it, and they're the facts, and it's playing out in front of us. So, excuse me, you hope that this week on the training pitch that Ruben can really get to work and make an impact, because it's been difficult for the manager, in fairness. You know, he took his first training session on Monday. You know, that was a recovery day after the weekend. Then they were straight into prepping for Watford. Then Thursday was a recovery day. They had a light session yesterday, obviously ahead of travelling down here yesterday afternoon. So he's not had much in the way. At least he'll get 2 or 3 really, really good sessions into the players this week ahead of Swansea, and he needs it, because he's got to find a way of getting that team more difficult to beat. And ultimately, it comes down to, as I say, it comes down to desire. It comes down to that willingness, that bravery to keep the ball out your net at one end and put it in the net at the other. And it's putting the ball in the back of the net at the other end is the most difficult thing to do in football. And that's why strikers and attacking players are paid the most money. Of course they are. But yeah, Darren, they have on Miller and Bellumi. Of course, you know Neil Harris has lost his job, or he leaves his job today, doesn't he? I think at Millwall, because he made a comment about fans last weekend, and he referred to a couple of their, you know, Jake Cooper and SA being out, and Tantanga being out, and he was saying, look, with Millwall, we can't cope with those 3 key players being out, and fans need to understand that, and that's a fair call in terms of Miller and Bellumi being out. You put Miller and Bellumi in that team, it changes it, but also that they're not there, and that is a harsh reality of the situation, that they're not going to be there. But ultimately, other players have got to step up, and you have to find players get injured, and unfortunately for City, 2 of their best players are now out for a year, and that is cruel. It's hard. It's all those words that you want to use, but ultimately they aren't here, and somebody else has to carry the can. And if that's from within, great. If that's a Kamara, a Ryan Longman, an Abdouche, a Will Jarvis, if he gets a look in, or if they have to go and try and solve that puzzle in January, so be it. But you have to deal with it, and you can't blame I'm sorry, but Liam Miller and Mohamed Baloumi not being in that team isn't a reason that Louis Coyle didn't stop Mason Clark from scoring a goal today, or why Ryan Giles didn't stop Victor Torp's cross coming in the box, or why, insert other player at points in the last few weeks haven't, stop goals from going in the net, or at the other end haven't put chances away. That's not because they haven't got Liam Miller and Mohamed Baloumi. Yes, without doubt, going forward they would create more. They would look a better team. But let's not pretend everything was rosy in the garden before those two players got injured. Baloumi was in the team at Oxford. They battered Oxford in that first half, didn't score, and conceded the goal and lost the game. Baloumi went off with 5 minutes to go. So let's not try and build a narrative around, well, we're bottom of the table because we've lost our two of our best players. That sub story isn't going to work, and that is a cop out, isn't it? If we're honest, so it's a contributing factor, and it's a big contributing factor. But to suggest that we're bottom of the table because Miller and Baloumi aren't playing is an absolute cop out. And anybody that, I don't think anybody would genuinely push that narrative and have any be able to look themselves in the mirror and have any self-respect, because that is nonsense. It's a contributing factor, but it's not the reason. So look, they are where they are. They are where they deserve to be, and they need to fight now. They are in a relegation battle, and we might think that they're, they don't deserve to be. People might say that, or people think that we'll get out of it dead easy, just a couple of wins. Well, the couple of wins have got to come from somewhere. And when you've lost, 7 and 8 now, you've not won in 13 games. That is a problem, isn't it? It's not like you've not won in 3 or 4. They haven't won since the end of September, or the 1st of October, I should say, or whatever it was. 75 days. That's a long time. That's a lot of football matches. And the longer it goes on, the bigger problem it becomes. And they clawed the gap to a point the other night. Well, that was great, but they've not taken advantage of it. So look, I think we're all worried. Yeah, Luke, in terms of recruitment, well, I know from a conversation I had at the training ground yesterday, things are in place, things are moving, and they've got to. There can't be any messing around in January. It can't be a case of we've got to wait until the final week, like was the reason in the summer. It can't be a case of, well, we're going to wait until the final week and see what drops. That isn't going to work, because that's at the end of the month. You can't afford to lose it pretty much another month. We already sacrificed most of August for whatever reason. So we've lost a month of the season. It's only a 9-month season. You can't afford to lose 3 weeks in January and go, oh, let's wait and see what happens in the final 24 hours. That's not going to, because those, again, you leave it until the final day of January. You've then got to wait until halfway through February to the end of February before those players get acclimatised and get settled. And they might not even be fit if they're coming from teams where they've not played, or they've only played under 21s football. They aren't going to be ready, are they? So you then halfway into February, and you're in the final few weeks of the season now. And it's almost, well, what's the point? They've got to be aggressive. They've got to get players in the first week, 10 days of January. They've got to hit the ground running, get them in the building, and get things moving. But they've also got to get players out because the squad is too big. We've talked about that before. So look, Steve, some of the loan players. Look, I'm not seeing anything. I've got to be honest. I've seen nothing from Puerta at all. I'm not so sure. Burns is nice lad, but what's the point of him being here? He isn't playing, and he's taken up a place in the squad. Get rid of him. Bring somebody in that's going to play. There's a lot of big decisions. Luke, go and get a goal scorer. Where from? Where are Hull City getting a goal scorer from? Genuine question. I'm not being difficult or facetious, but where are they going to get a centre forward from that's going to come to Hull City and suddenly start scoring reams and reams of goals to get them out the position? I mean, they're not creating a barrel load of chances, are they? Everybody in the land wants a striker. They cost the money. They tried in the summer. They tried with Cannon, missed. They tried with Conway at Borough, who went to Borough, missed. Darren, I'm not saying you were copping out. No. Sorry, you misinterpreted. I'm not saying you were making a cop out. But I think anybody that tries to blame Miller and Baloumi on the season, capitulating as it is copping out. I'm not for a minute saying that you were copping it out. No. They tried to sign Conway, they tried to sign Cannon, they tried to sign Fofana and Washington. Didn't get any of them. Trying to sign him, go and sign somebody. It can't be a hard luck story. Oh, well, but we tried to sign Tommy Conway and he chose, Middlesbrough. Or we tried to sign Tom Cannon, but he chose Stoke City. Make these players. You've got to make a player want to come to join Hull City, and that's the big challenge for them in the window. It's making good players, not just signing players for the hell of it, just to say, oh, we've signed 5 players in January, we've given the manager 5 more players. He doesn't need 5 more players. What he needs quality players that are going to come in and make this team better, not 5 players for the sake of it, just because. He's got enough players. Numbers isn't the problem. Quality is the problem here. And that is something they've got to rectify in January. Otherwise, how does he get them out of this mess? Oh, yeah, Thomas Asante is another one. Yeah, exactly. Luke, in terms of, sorry, I was just reading Luke, go to League One, but that will cost. You've got to be, it's a really fine balancing act. But my worry is that they end up splashing a load of cash they could do without splashing on players that are going to come for the wrong reasons. And that's where recruitment people, that's where Adjun, that's where Jared Dublin and everybody else at the football club that's involved in recruitment has got to earn their money. It's a really difficult job now. This is going to be a really difficult sell in January. They'll be talking to, obviously they're talking to agents and clubs now. Of course they are. It's not like they wake up they wait for the fireworks at Big Ben and then start making phone calls. Things are happening now, but they've got to hit the ground running. It can't be another, we missed out on him, we missed out on him, hard luck story. They've got to go and find players, but they've got to do it financially prudently. They've got to do it within budget, and they've got to get the players that want to come here for the right reasons. Splashing £4 million on a striker from wherever to go, look, we've signed somebody, isn't going to wash, is it? And yeah, Mark, that's 13 wins is, where's that coming from? Where's 4 wins coming from at this stage? So look, he's got a big job on, and it is about staying up, and that's the first and foremost. 11 wins from 25 games, when you put it like that, Mark, that is like a smack in the face, isn't it? That really hits home the form that they need. They basically got to go on promotion form now to get themselves out of this, and based on what we've seen so far, that isn't going to happen, is it? It is going to need a mesmeric turnaround to get themselves out of this mess, and just to get them, just to get competitive again. But like I say, we're going around in circles. You've got to be worried, and we've all got to be worried, and we can't be naive to this situation. And hopefully, everybody at the football club is aware of just how bleak this picture is, and that's not, again, over-egging the cake. That isn't. The situation is bleak. They're bottom of the table after 20 games. Or 21 games. The situation is there. It doesn't need anybody to emphasise it. It's staring you straight in the face. You're not 17th or 18th and in poor form. You're bottom of the league. Bottom of the table. That should be warning enough that you're failing. That everybody is failing. I'm a big fan of Ruben. I really like him. I think he's we said it about Tim. Tim was given a difficult job. He wasn't able to turn it around. He wasn't able to get it right. And Ruben's got a big job on to getting this turned around and getting those players that performed out there today, or didn't perform, if you like, getting them going, because it's difficult to see where a win's coming from at the minute. The 13 games tells that, doesn't it? And teams that don't win for 13, 14, 15 games, that's a real concern. Pete, no, I'm certainly not going on any Christmas do. I'm not sure I'd be wanting to go on a Christmas do after playing like that, if I'm honest. But that's another story. They are human after all. Right, that's it from here at the CBS Arena. We will have the podcast for you on. Just quickly, Mark. He won't be happy, will he? As the owner, he's not going to be. He's not going to be happy. But the club's decision making over the last few months and recruitment is why they are where they are. I don't think it's one person's fault. I think it's a collective. Everybody will have an opinion on that, but ultimately they're in a disastrous position. They're bottom of the league after going into a game before Christmas, and there's every chance they're going to be bottom at Christmas. And teams that are bottom at Christmas of any league very rarely get away from that. So everybody connected with the football side of things at the football club has to take a long, hard look in the mirror, don't they? As I said before, we came here at the end of 24th of April, 1-3-2, and we're in the race for the playoffs. We've now come here middle of December, and they're bottom of the table, and that's a sobering reality of where Hull City are. The best thing we can look forward to is coming back to Coventry next season. I think if we can look forward to a league trip to Coventry next season, things have gone well in the second half of the season, because at the minute we're going to be looking down the barrel of going to some places in League One, aren't we? Unless the manager, his coaching staff, and his players can turn it around, and we hope they do. Let's try and end on a positive, as negative as we've been because of what we've just seen. Let's hope that they can turn it around. Let's have belief that the manager, after a full week on the training pitch, could spark some magic, spark a recovery, and we could all troop away from the MKM Stadium in the freezing cold next Saturday night and head into Christmas with some positivity on the back of 3 points. It feels a long way off tonight, admittedly. It feels like there's absolutely no chance of it as we sit here tonight. But football's a funny old game. The Championship is a funny old beast, and we have to hope that over the course of the next week, that the players and the manager can turn it around, because I believe the manager's capable. I actually believe the players in that dressing room have got enough about them, should have enough pride and enough quality to go out and perform and get a result next week and spark a turnaround. Because if they don't, they're going to be League One players next year, and that's something on their CV and on their conscience they're going to have. Only they can turn it around. We can talk about it, we can discuss it. You can pay your money, you can come and support them, you can do whatever you can do from the terraces, but ultimately we have absolutely no power in this. The only people that can turn this around are the players and the staff. So let's hope that starting next week, they can. So that's it from the CBS Arena here. We get, again, the sign that they want to close up and go home. So we're being kicked out. We'll have the podcast for you on Monday. We'll have myself, Burnsy, Fletch, and Prutz will be, trying to sprinkle some Christmas magic on the podcast, the final one before, well, no, it won't be the final one before Christmas, but one of the last ones before Christmas. Couple of quick injury points. Kamara was taken off with a knock. Nothing serious. It was just a precaution. Casey Palmer also had a bit of a knock, but again, nothing serious. Giles was just selection, obviously played a lot of minutes. So I don't think there's any injuries that have come out of today. Everybody should be back available for next weekend, including Xavier Simons. Let's hope that he will be back in training on Monday and going into the weekend. So yeah, plenty of stuff to come from here. I've just spoke to Frank Lampard as well. Got some interesting stuff from him on City and Selej and whatnot. So as always, I'll be tapping away furiously. That'll be my Saturday night, tapping away furiously. If you're out on the town, have a good one, have a good weekend, have a good Christmas. If we don't talk to you, well, we will talk. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm getting confused. I'm thinking it's closer to Christmas than it actually is. We'll be back on Monday with the podcast, and then we'll be back at the MKM Stadium next Saturday. Up the Tigers.